Well, hello there, everybody. This is Caleb Jones, and this is the Sovereign CEO podcast, where I show you how to create location-independent income or move out of your collapsing, horrible, authoritarian, high-tax, angry Western country, or at least set up an international plan B and do so without spending a lot of money, because as much as I love my friend Andrew Henderson of Nomad Capitalist, you don't need to be a multimillionaire or a seven-figure income earner to utilize my services. I think everyone at every income level should have the opportunity to create location-independent income and to, if they want, leave their country or at least internationalize their life or set up a plan B or what have you. I think that should not be limited to just very wealthy, high-income motherfuckers like me. So today is a core topic that I've talked about a lot in my Alpha Male 2.0 content. And that is the topic of how much money do you need to make long-term in your life to be happy and to be stable. And if you are familiar with my Alpha Male 2.0 content, you know that I have said as an Alpha Male 2.0 baseline minimum that you need to make approximately $75,000 a year in US dollars or US equivalent. That is pre-tax. That is before you pay taxes. If you have a business, that is pre-tax net. So before you pay taxes, for maximum long-term happiness. And I stand by that figure. Just one problem. We have a little thing called inflation. And due to you psychopaths regularly voting for Democrats and Republicans and the lesser of two evils for the past 35 years, both in the United States and those non-American equivalents, if you live in Canada, Australia, Western Europe, what have you, we now have a thing called inflation because our government keeps printing up trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars for no goddamn reason, whenever the hell they want. And so that actually makes the value of your currency less, which means things cost more money. And so that $75,000 figure really doesn't apply anymore. So I have been forced, unfortunately, based on some new studies and some new research I've done this year, to raise that figure to $85,000 per year. That's approximately $7,000 a month in US dollars or the US dollar equivalent. And again, that is pre-tax. Now, so that is now the new official number that I quote to people, $85,000 a year or approximately $7,000 a month, which if you've never made that money sounds like a lot of money, but it really isn't with today's inflation. People who make $75,000, $85,000 a year are not anywhere near wealthy or near rich. Just ask a few and they'll tell you all about it. Now, whenever I quote this number, either the 75K or the 85K, I get deluged with questions and confusion. Well, Caleb, wait a minute. What if I live in Thailand? Does that apply if I live in Thailand? I don't need that much money if I live in Thailand. That's ridiculous. Well, Caleb, wait a minute. What if I live in downtown London? I can't even get a flat for, double that price. That's crazy. Well, Caleb, what if I have 5 kids? What if this and what if that and what if this and what if that? Hey, Caleb, could you tell me exactly how much money I would need to make if I lived in Medellin, Colombia? Or if I lived in Chiang Mai, Thailand? Or if I lived in, as if I know all these things by heart. So in this podcast, I'm going to address all these concerns and all these rationales. So a few things. Number one, let me explain that number first. That number is based on happiness studies. And that means that people who make less than $85,000 a year most likely would be happier if they made more money. Whoever said money doesn't make you happy is actually objectively and factually and scientifically wrong. Making more money does make you happier. I am one of the picture-perfect examples of this. I grew up in a family that was not poor. I don't want to say I was poor, that's overstating it. But I lived in a family where my dad supported a family of 7 on a low income. He was one of the last generations of men who could do this back in the 1970s, before the inflation really hit. In addition to other factors like cost of living increases, higher taxes, real estate increases, women entering the workforce, globalization, lots of other factors. And so we had very little money. We were very, very tight when we were youngins, when we were little kids. My mom was barely able to buy us Christmas presents. And every Christmas, what she would have to do is pick one kid out of the 5 to get the big Christmas present, and all the other kids got 2 or 3 little piddly presents. And so it kind of sucks. And the only way she was able to do that was she actually had to save up all year, starting in January. She set up a little savings account called Christmas, and every once in a while she'd put $5 or $6 or $10 in there, and by the time November rolled around, she could do a little Christmas shopping. I could tell you all kinds of sob stories about my childhood. I won't, but it sucked. I hated it. Then, if you guys know my story, those of you who know, When I moved out of my house at age 18, I was fucking poor. I had months where I could not, many months, it was typical, where I couldn't pay my electric bill. I couldn't pay my water bill. I had to figure out how long it took for the electric company to actually shut off your electricity before you could pay the bill. And I figured out you could wait as long as 4 months. It was great. There were days that I had to struggle to put gas in my car. Couldn't afford it. And I hated it. And I started making more money. And guess what? I was so much happier. You can't fucking believe it. Today, I make more money than I ever thought I would make. I make many, many, many multiples of these minimums, 85K. And trust me, it's better. So I've been in a scenario where I had no money and a scenario where I have a lot of money. Having a lot of money makes you happier. Trust me, it just does. But if you don't want to take my word for it, there are many studies, you can Google these things, I've read about a lot of them, where they've done studies where when people make more money, they are happier to a degree. Now, 85K, this is kind of the new standard now, means that if you make more money than 85K, you are less likely to be that much happier. You might be happier, it depends on your personality, you might not be much happier, or at least it's an issue of diminishing returns. Where, for example, maybe going from 40K to 85K, that's almost double your income, right? Makes you 300% or 500% happier, but going from 85K to double that, which would be what, 170K, wouldn't necessarily make you double as happier. It might make you 10% happier or 20% happier. So you encounter diminishing returns beyond 85K. Now, everyone's personality is different. If I made 85K, I would be fucking miserable. I would. I like to have a little more money than that, actually a lot more money than that. I'm one of those guys who likes making more money. You might be in that category. If you are in that category, guess what? You need to make a hell of a lot more than 85K, bro. A hell of a lot. Your baseline should be 250,000 a year, in my opinion. If you want to make the good money, the big money, that should be your baseline. Now, you may not be like that. You may be perfectly fine. And you may not be a very money-motivated person. That's fine. There are guys like that in the Sovereign CEO community, in the Alpha 2.0 community. It's perfectly fine. So 85K is your baseline. That's your baseline. And once you make 85K, you can reevaluate at that time. You might say, you know what, this is fine. Or you might say, you know what, no, I want a little more money. And you can go after a little more. That's okay too, however you want to do it. Just consider 85,000 a year as your baseline minimum, no matter what your personality is. I don't care what your personality is. I don't care how much of a hippie you are. I don't care how much of a left-winger you are. I don't care about all the societal programming. Your parents filled your head about rich people are evil and money doesn't make you happy. And well, at least we're honest. We might be poor, but at least we're honest, implying that people who are not poor are not honest. And by the way, I had all that societal programming too from my left-wing parents. They told me all the time, rich people are dicks and, rich people have to work 80 hours a week and they're terrible parents. And I heard all kinds of horrible shit about people who made more money. All of it untrue, or the vast majority of it untrue. So stupid. So 85,000 is your minimum. Now, let's get into the complicated factors. Does that mean there are no regional differences for lifestyle expenditures across the world? Of course not. So 85,000 a year is kind of a broad spectrum around the world, kind of leaning toward the Western world number. Yes, if you move to a lower cost of living country, you can drop that number somewhat. Now, you may ask the question, well, how much exactly do I drop it? So this is where we get into confusions about guys who are being a little too nerdy. I got a lot of questions about this. Caleb, if I move to this particular country and this particular city, what is my new number? I don't know. I do not have the ability or the resources to develop some kind of gigantic spreadsheet that covers the entire planet Earth, every city on Earth, and what your minimum baseline income should be. That would be a tremendously big and expensive project, and I don't have the resources to do that. I can only guess. I can only tell you that yes, if you live in Thailand, if you live in Colombia, if you live in Cambodia, if you live in Paraguay, yes, you won't need $85,000 a year / $7,000 a month. You could probably drop that number to, I don't know, 60,000, 50,000 maybe. I don't know the exact number, but you could certainly drop that number and that would be okay. However, and this is a big however, guys never plan this stuff out. Let me give the whole picture here. That means that this number is only valid if you plan on moving to that country and living there for the rest of your life. What a lot of young guys do is they say, I want to save money on living expenses. So when they are young, in their 20s or early 30s, with no girlfriend, no kids, no debts, no big life infrastructure, they jack up and they move to Ecuador, or they move to Peru, or they move to Colombia, or they move to Thailand, or they move to Chiang Mai, or they move somewhere where it's really cheap. And they have a great time. And it's really cheap there. And it's wonderful. But you know what they often do? I've seen this happen many times with people I know. You know what they often do? When they get into the zone of death, which is age 35 for men, and they start thinking, what is life all about? I need to settle down and get a wife and have kids. Guess what they do? In many cases, they move back to the collapsing, authoritarian, high tax, high cost of living Western world. So guess what? If you live in Paraguay, sure, you can make only 50,000 a year location dependent. But the split second you move back to the UK, because now you want to, find a wife or some shit, whatever fucking reason you have, when you move back to the United States, when you move back to Chicago, or you Asian guys, when you move back to fucking Shanghai or back to Tokyo or back to wherever, then guess what? Your number immediately jacks back up again, and now you need to go increase your income again. So this excuse of, well, I only live, or I'm going to live, Caleb, in a cheap, shitty, shithole country where it's going to cost less money, that is only a valid excuse if you plan on living there literally for the rest of your life. Yes, you can go visit your collapsing Western authoritarian country. That's what I'm doing right now as I record this podcast. Unfortunately, I'm back in the United States. So I'm visiting here. I don't live here. I'm never live here again. I don't even like visiting here. I have family here and other obligations here temporarily. So yes, you can visit. But if you move back there, you've just blown your whole excuse. And as always, as I've said many times with you young guys, it's real easy to say when you're 26, I'm going to live in Thailand the rest of my life. I'm never moving back to the United States. Ever. I'm never moving back to Australia. Ever again. It's real easy to say that. Try saying that when you're 45. Now, maybe you will stay there the rest of your life. I don't know. I'm just letting you know, if that's the excuse you're going to use, I don't need to make $85K a year because I'm going to live in, insert this name of this really cheap country. You better stay there for the rest of your goddamn life. Okay? And if you don't know, quote unquote, you don't know if you're going to stay there the rest of your life or what have you, then guess what? Your new minimum is now $85,000 again. Because that covers you no matter where you go in the world. If you instead say, look, my baseline is $85,000 a year, now wherever you go in the world, your income will cover you. Instead of being one of these lazy fucks who says, well, I only need to make $45,000 because I live really cheaply and I live on the beach in Chiang Mai. You have to stay in Chiang Mai for the rest of your life. The rest of your life. 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Are you going to do that? Odds are you're probably not. You might be the exception to the rule, but I don't know. That's why it's a little dangerous to use this as an excuse. Yes, it's a valid excuse, but you need to look long term, and a lot of you young guys don't do that. Okay? Be very aware of this. Kind of important. Now, the next factor is children and settling down with a woman. So let me cover each one. When you settle down with a woman, I'm not even going to use the word get married because you shouldn't get legally married. But when you settle down with a woman, and as I've said 1,000 times in my Alpha Male 2.0 content, the vast majority of you young guys eventually will, even if you say you're never going to, you're going to. When you reach into the 30s, 40s, 50s, you're going to want to live with a woman in some form or fashion. I don't care if you get married or not. When you settle down with a woman, I've written numerous articles about this in my Black Dragon content, that puts upward pressure on your living expenses. Even if you follow my Alpha Male 2.0 relationship models, OLTR marriage and things like that, separate finances, prenuptial agreement, blah, blah, blah. Even if you do all that stuff, the act of having a woman who is a quote unquote wife in your life is going to put upward pressure on your living expenses. That certainly happened to me when I moved in with my lovely wife, Pink Firefly. My lifestyle expenses went up a little bit. They went up a tick. They did, because that's just what happens when you move in with a woman. Even if she makes her own money, even if she's wealthy, doesn't matter. She's a girl. Girls spend money. That's just the way it works. Assume that to be true. So $85,000 is an average across the board for all men, including men who are single and or live alone. So if you realize that if you're going to move in with a woman, or you already have a significant other, wife or live-in girlfriend, I don't care, someone you live with full time, you might need to jack up that figure a little bit. You might need to jack it up to $95,000 or $105,000. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do that. Now, yes, you can factor that with moving to a cheaper country. If you can convince your Western wife to move and live in Thailand, good luck on that. But whatever, you can do that. Fine, that's fine. I'm just letting you know that this number has to be adjusted slightly upwards if you are eventually going to live with someone. Make sense? Not always, but usually. Having children. The majority of you in my audience do not yet have any kids because the majority of you in my audience are under the age of about 35. So if you don't have kids, great. The question is, do you ever want kids? Kind of like what I said earlier about, are you ever going to move out of your lower cost second world, third world country? ever in your life are you going to go back to the Western world? The answer is, I don't know. That means you probably will. So you need to account for this. When you have kids, I've talked about this many times, that puts massive upward pressure on your monthly expenses. Now, I have another YouTube video over at Alpha Male 2.0 where I talk about having kids in the modern era and in the Western world is insanity unless you make a strong 6-figure income or you are already a multimillionaire. In that other video, you can check that out on my other channel if you want. I go into detail as to why having kids these days in the Western world is only for high income and or wealthy men. It is extraordinarily dangerous to have kids if you don't have a lot of money if you live in the Western world. Now again, you can combine that by getting out of the Western world, which I think you should do, going to a lower taxed or lower cost of living country, then settling down with a woman there and having kids there, but staying there. I don't mean settling down with a woman in Cambodia, some Cambodian chick, having 2 or 3 kids, then moving back to Chicago. That's insanity. No, you stay there forever. So you can do that. Just be aware, if you have kids, or if you're ever going to have any kids, especially if it's in the Western world, that 85 figure needs to go up. Now, how much exactly, Caleb? I have my calculator ready. I'm sorry I can't give you exact numbers. I'm just saying 85,000 is going to cut it. It's going to have to be more. And these compound. So you're going to raise kids without a woman, without a wife. That will drop your expenses. But you're going to have a wife or live-in girlfriend, plus have kids, plus stay in the collapsing Western world. These compound. That means you have even higher income pressure on what you need to make as your minimum baseline income for how much money you need to make. Again, location independent. Another factor, obviously, is the factor of your lifestyle choices. Now, again, some of you guys, some of you, not most of you, some of you are perfectly happy living in a studio apartment, having a piece of shit car, and sleeping on your shitty bed. There are some men who are like this. So for you, great, you don't have to worry about raising the 85,000K figure. 85,000 is still your figure unless you move to a cheaper country, but you don't need to worry about raising that figure. I don't know about you, but I kind of like wearing nice clothes, living in a nice place. If I need a car, I don't. I'm never going to own a car ever again. But if I wanted to own a car, it would have to be a nice car. Last car I owned was a Lexus, pretty nice car, $50,000 car, right? I don't want to drive a piece of shit. My thing too is travel. I want to be able to go wherever I want to go, anywhere in the world, without worrying about how much it costs. Matter of fact, that was one of my big goals when I was a young man. I fantasized about being able to wake up and just say, you know what, today I'm going to go to Hawaii and just go and not worry about how much money it was and have the wherewithal to go to have location independent income. I hit that goal many years ago now. I've done other podcasts about this where I kind of consider myself a citizen of the world because I can literally wake up any morning, snap my fingers, get a plane ticket anywhere I want to go in the world, and it doesn't matter how much it costs. I can go anywhere I want. And so that costs money. So if I made $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd be kind of stuck. I'd have to be like the typical person, like I used to be, where if I wanted to go to China, I'd have to save up. I'd have to put $100 away in some kind of little fund or $200 and save up $1,200 or $1,500 to buy a plane ticket, and then $1,000 for the Airbnb or what have you, and all the other expenses. I had to save up for it. Instead today, I can just snap my fingers and go. And I can only do that because I have a decent amount of money. So there are certain things in your life that you want or will want as you get older that are going to cost money. And if you want to be the typical average guy and live the typical average life in terms of lifestyle expenses, that's okay, fine. But if you're like me and you like things a little fancier, a little nicer, or you know, whatever it is you like, whatever you like to spend money on, or experiences you like to have that cost money, you need to factor that into this baseline number. A lot of you, just like a lot of you are okay living in a studio apartment the rest of your life, there are a lot of you who are in the opposite category. There are a lot of you who are like me and are going to be fucking miserable making $85,000 a year. Only $7,000 a month before taxes. You'll fucking hate that. You want to do things that are way more expensive than that, which means you need to make even more money. When I talk to guys in the six-figure warrior mentorship, my objective for those guys, and this is not the goal of the program, this is my personal hope for those guys, and these guys know this because I've talked to them about it, the guys in the current focus program, is for them to make at least $250,000 a year, location independent. About $250,000 a year. Once you make $250,000, neat things start to happen in your life. That's really where you break through and you feel like a rich person. You're not rich at $250,000 a year. You're not. But you feel rich because you can now do things that pretty much you were not able to do before at the $250,000 a year mark. And so that's why I use that as a benchmark for you guys who want to make the big money, $250,000. That's about $20,000 a month pre-tax. Caleb, I can never make that much money. Yeah, you can. Oh, yes, you can. Oh, yes, you can. I make more money than any goal I ever set for myself. I make a lot more than $250,000 a year. A lot more than that. Trust me, you can do it, especially with materials like mine and other people's where you don't have to start all over and try to figure this out on your own. You already have a path other guys have taken like me, and you can just copy that path. So yes, you can. You can if you want to. So $85,000 a year is a minimum, not a maximum. That's kind of the point I'm trying to drive home in the last 10 minutes here. That is your minimum. That is not a maximum. That is not like, okay, good, I've hit $85,000 a year. Now I'm good to go the rest of my life, no matter where I move to, no matter how many kids I have, no matter whether I sit down, no matter what I want to buy in the future, or any of those things, I'm good to go. In some cases, that's true, but in a lot of cases, that is not true. That is the minimum. You may need to raise that minimum over time. Perfectly fine. Now, one thing I have not addressed this podcast is the issue of you guys who have net worths. You guys who actually have assets. I know there are a lot of you in my audience. Regardless of your income, some of you guys, I do know some of you personally, you have weaker incomes, but you have a lot of money in investments, either because you inherited money or you made a lot of money in crypto or you were lucky on some investments and things like that. I have not even addressed that because that gets a little complicated because it depends on how much money you're making, how much money you have in terms of net worth, what your average return is, whether or not you can pull money out, whether or not you're going to incur capital gains. So the issue of you guys who have net worth, who have assets like I do, the issue of being able to draw upon that money, or even you guys who have just big savings accounts. I have a brother who does that. He just saves up, $80,000, $90,000 on a savings account, and then he just travels the world and doesn't have a job and spends it all. Then he goes back and gets a job and does it again. I know people who do that. You guys like that, even you guys, it gets a little complicated. It's not something I can address. Well, Caleb, what if I have, $500,000 liquid in cash and crypto and other liquid assets, but I only make $30,000 a year? Do I count as location dependent? Can I count that toward my $85,000 a year? Really depends. It really depends on your scenario. A lot of factors. I wish I could address that in some generalized way, but I really can't. But yes, that's why I'm addressing it. Yes, if you have 6 figures, certainly 7 figures of liquid cash you don't mind spending, I think you shouldn't spend it if you have that kind of money, but okay, whatever, it's your money. And you want to use that toward your lifestyle, yes, you could make the argument that you don't need that $85,000. But again, how long can you sustain that? Can you do that for a year or two, then you got to go back to work? Can you do that for a year or two, then you start worrying about money, which that's most guys. Most guys do it for a year or 2 or 3, then they got to start worrying about money, right? Can you do it forever? Well, then you're not only location dependent, you're financially independent. That's great. So just be aware of these factors. Again, I wish I could address this, but I really can't in more specific terms. Next factor is, of course, taxes. So if you are familiar with my Alpha Male 2.0 content, I advocate both in Alpha Male 2.0 and Sovereign CEO living a low taxed lifestyle. That is the entire point, in many cases, of moving out of your collapsing high tax authoritarian Western country. I live in the United Arab Emirates, where other than a 5% sales tax, there are literally no taxes at all. There's no payroll taxes, no income taxes, no federal income taxes, no social security taxes, no property taxes if you buy residential property, no corporate taxes. It's fucking beautiful. So the $85,000 figure does not include your taxes. It actually assumes, in my world at least, that you are following at least some of the concepts and techniques here at Sovereign CEO, where you are living as low of a tax lifestyle as is feasibly possible. There are lots of ways to do that, both within your country. We have a mini course on how to reduce your taxes, and doing it outside of your country if you leave your collapsing Western country, which of course I have done. My goal, and I may have already hit this goal, I don't know, it's kind of weird. It will be another year or two before I know if I've hit this goal right now. But my goal, and I've said this many times, is to get my total tax burden of all the taxes I pay my entire life down to less than 4% or less of my total income. Nice. The typical American, as I've shown on my blogs, American now, pays anywhere between 51 and 70% of his entire income in taxes he sees, and in many taxes he doesn't see, which is why most Americans, when you quote these figures, they're like, that can't be right. You can go to my blogs, read the articles there about how I break down all the figures. But that $85,000 figure assumes that you are doing at least something to reduce your tax burden. If you are a non-sovereign CEO, if you're a non-Alpha Male 2.0, you're just a wage slave, you just have a job, and you make $85,000 a year at your corporate job, you're screwed, because depending on where you live, you're paying as much as 40, 50, in some cases 60% of your gross income in some form of tax. Payroll taxes, state income taxes, federal income taxes, right? W-2, all this garbage. You're paying all kinds of taxes. You're really not making $85,000 a year. I love these guys who live in Simi Valley, who live in like the San Francisco area, who work in the tech field. They have a cool job at Google and they make $130,000 a year, and they actually think they're making $130,000 a year. No, 55% of their paychecks are taken out as taxes before they even touch that money. So you actually make less than that. You make $70,000 a year, which isn't even the $85,000 a year baseline in terms of after-tax income. So you have to pay attention to taxes. It's very important. I mean, even before I left the country, I was paying, low double digits in taxes, around 14, 15, 16, 17% in total taxes on my entire income. And I make a pretty high six-figure income, maybe more than that. So, hey, if I can do it, it should be relatively easy for you to do it as a location-independent business owner. I've talked about this many times. One of the most horrible aspects of being a salaried employee is you get raked when it comes to taxes. When you have your own location-independent business, all of a sudden you get taxed a lot less because 98% of all tax laws are written for companies, not individuals. So there is literally no reason not to start your own business, at least on the side, as an employee. By the way, that's how I got started. Those of you who know my story, that's how I got started. I started a small business on the side way back a billion years ago, small little consulting business where I worked on weekends and evenings, and I made actually a decent amount of money doing that, and eventually that became a full-time business, and it was kind of nice. And you can do the same thing. You can build an Alpha 2.0 business, sovereign CEO, location-independent business on 10 to 15 hours per week. More than 15 hours a week is better if you can do it, but you can do it on 15 hours a week if you have a full-time job. You can do it. It'll take you a little longer, but you can do it. I've done it. Other people have done it. It's not a big deal. So Sovereign CEO is a comprehensive system, not just of location-independent income, but also of decent, high location-independent income, $7,000 a month, while getting your tax burden down. I mean, think about this for a second, unless you already have this. Some of you already have this, which is great, but most of you don't. Think about this for a minute. Think about if you made $7,000 a month, 100% location independent, so it doesn't matter where you were, the money just kept coming in every month, $7,000 a month, and you only paid about 20 to 15% in total taxes on that $7,000 a month. Think about that for a second. I mean, let's do the math, right? Let me get a calculator out here. So let's see. All right, let's say you make $7,000 a month, okay, which is our baseline minimum, okay? And let's do the high end. Let's say you pay 20% of your income in tax, right? So I'm going to do times 0.8. That means you are putting in your pocket, after all business expenses and all taxes, $5,600 a month. That you just pure living expenses for you. And it's location independent. You can live anywhere you want. You can go anywhere you want. How do you think that would change your life? Yeah. And by the way, this is a doable goal. On a semi-regular basis, I have people low-income guys who say, oh my God, $7,000, that is so much money. Whereas I see other guys like, only $7,000 a month, that's easy. Shouldn't it be more than that? This is a doable goal. I've said this many, many, many times over the past 10 years plus. $7,000 a month, $85,000 a year is a doable goal for any man in the world who speaks English. I am not Grant Cardone. I am not Dan Lok. I am not one of these guys that say you need to make hundreds of millions of dollars or you're a loser. That is beyond the ability of many people. Absolutely true. I do not advocate any of those systems. I advocate $85,000 a year, location independent. I don't care what your goddamn excuse is. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what country you live in. I don't care how stupid you think you are. I don't care how uneducated you think you are. I have no college degree and no high school diploma. I didn't drop out of high school, but I never got the diploma. I got too many F's on my report card. And I did it. I make way more than $7,000 a month. And well, Caleb, that's easy for you. No. I personally know guys who are morons who make more money than me. I've talked about these guys before. I have worked with tons of guys who make all kinds of high incomes, some location dependent and some not. Most of them not, but a lot of them do have location dependent income. You can do this. $85,000 a year is a doable goal for any man listening to this or watching this. That's not a big deal. I am not talking about $500,000 a year or $10 million a year, making $100 million, right? I don't discuss those topics. Now, if you want to do that, please proceed. Please do. I kind of agree with you, but I'm a maniac. $85,000 a year is a doable goal for you. I'm not kidding. It is. Don't think it isn't. I don't teach things that are beyond the ability of normal men. I don't do that. I don't want to do that. So stop making excuses. This is a doable goal for you. This is not a big, yes, it might take you a few years. It might take you a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It might take you 4 years. Fine. As I've said many times, let's say it takes you 5 years. You're a total moron. It takes you 5 years. You do everything wrong. You don't follow any of my advice, so it takes you 5 years, okay? Take your current age and add 5. And now for the rest of your life, you've got $5,600 a month coming in location dependent. Is that a good deal? That's a great deal. If it took you 10 years, it'd be a good investment, wouldn't it? $85,000 a year, $7,000 a month. That is your baseline minimum, unless you're going to move outside the Western world and stay there for the rest of your life. If this is a topic you want me to discuss more, let me know, and I certainly can, because I know I get a lot of questions and confusion on this topic. $85,000 a year, $7,000 a month, location dependent. Go get it done. You have all my content. You have all my materials. You can follow other people's materials, not just mine. Get it done. Not a big deal. See you in the next podcast. Bye.